Hi, welcome to Republican Roundtable. I'm your guest host, Jennifer Zielinski. Max Reimer has the night off, and we are deep in the 2022 election season. Tonight we have a Minneapolis candidate, Andrew Schmitz, who's running in probably one of the...
Definitely one of the most Democrat districts in the state.
Yes, but Andrew, thank you and welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. One thing we always like to ask you is, who are you and why are you running for office?
So my name is Andrew Schmitz. I am the candidate for Senate District 62. The basic boundaries of that district, for the most part, is I-94 to the north, and then Lyndale to the west. For the most part, about 47th Street with a little bit of variation on the south side, and Cedar Avenue to the east, with a little bit of 55 being the boundary. So those are the boundaries of the district. I believe it's the smallest geographic in the state. Anyway, so what prompted me to run is that I went to a convention, or my Republican BPOU convention, back in late March on a Saturday, and returned back to my apartment to find that it had been broken into and burglarized. They just kicked the door in, and I don't know if anyone's ever been burglarized, but when they get into your stuff, they just throw everything everywhere, looking for valuables, make a huge mess. So I got back, door kicked in, as I said. Stuff was just all over the place, huge mess. They probably stole around $4,000 worth of stuff. So yeah. I called the police, and they did eventually show up and took a police report. And I thought they were, absolutely professional when they were there and showed up and, sort of let me list what I could figure out at the moment had been stolen. But it's a truly awful experience. I wouldn't wish it on anybody. And, that was kind of a tipping point for me, and told me, the crime is just so awful. This is just getting so bad that I need to do something about this. And so later, a few months later, I was asked to run for state senate and decided that it was time to step up and run. So that is, that is what prompted me to run.
It's almost like you could use your story, your issue that happened. I don't want to call it your issue, but your traumatic experience that happened, and feel that fire to get you to really relate to what's happening across your district and across Minneapolis.
Well, that's what I'm trying to do. It's not just me. That wasn't just a one-time thing. The crime in the city is absolutely out of control. The stats show it. The anecdotal stories show it. If you follow the 5th Precinct Crime Watch Facebook group, they just constantly post, everything, all the crime that's happening in that area, and it's just carjacking, theft, break-in, car theft, police chase. It's just on and on and on and on. And it's absolutely out of control. So later on, a few weeks ago, some hobos broke into my building. Again, they just crowbarred a door open, because they can. And I was actually in St. Paul at the time, and I saw it on one of the cameras that we had set up, that there was someone in the building that wasn't supposed to be there. And so I drove over from St. Paul over the course of about 15 minutes, got there, and there was somebody I knew inside who was, in a different room, on the phone. And, what these criminals were doing is they were just raiding our storage lockers. They were in the building. And so I called the police, and after about 20 minutes, they didn't show up. Burglary in progress, right? They're in the building. So then other people in the building started calling the police. And, the person I was on the phone with called them, and the elderly neighbor that we had upstairs called them and said, "Hey, there's burglars in our building right now, rummaging through our stuff. Can you please send up, someone to arrest them?" And they're like, "Oh, well, we're working on it. And finally, about 45 minutes after I get there, they walk out of the building, and I start following them down the street. And I called the police again, and they said, "I'm following, the people that broke into our building, please send somebody." And the first thing they say is, "Oh my gosh, keep your distance from them." But I say, "Well, send somebody." And they say, "We don't have anybody. All units are occupied." And that's the state of police in Minneapolis right now. So I go back to, I give up. Because it's like, well, apparently they're not coming, right? So I go back to my apartment. I would have stuck around longer and probably followed the guy longer, but I had a plane that I had to catch. And I had to quick pack over about 15 minutes. So I go back and I pack, and I'm just about to walk out the door, and the Minneapolis police finally shows up. 2 cops, and they just look completely flustered and overworked, like, they were just rushing from a previous job. It's clear to me, and that's the state of things in Minneapolis right now. That is the point to which the police force has been decimated, that, the response time sometimes is an hour. And the criminals just know, that's why, they can just act with impunity for the most part, because they know that no one's probably coming. I'll bring up some stats here that I've got from various sources. So in Minneapolis, gunshot victims, are up about 100%. Homicide has doubled since 2019. We had about 48 homicides in 2019, and I kind of use that as a benchmark year because that was before the pandemic. Although if you listen to some sources, they'll point out that this crime increase actually started pre-pandemic. So 48 in 2019, 96 last year. We almost tied the record back from the 90s when Minneapolis was, called Murderapolis. Mm-hmm. What else? So carjacking has exploded, and I think there's various reasons for that, but it's supposedly up 519%.
Wow.
And I hear about these in my neighborhood all the time and in the district. Strong-arm ones, a lot of armed carjackers. They're just taking these cars, for the most part, joyriding them. Actually, what was it? I think last week I went out to my car outside my apartment, and there was some extra parking spaces in my lot, and parked right next to my car was an obviously stolen car. Driver's window smashed in, mess in the car, no key. It was, most obviously a stolen car, so I called that in. I think I came across another stolen car a week earlier than that. Well, I think it was stolen. It was just a car, left on the side of the road with the door open. And that's what it seems like most of these criminals are doing, is they're just stealing it for fun because they know they can.
There's no consequences for them from what we've seen from the judicial side at all, from the elected officials. Are the elected officials hearing our thoughts or views on what's happening, or are they ignoring this criminal activity?
I can't paint them all with the same brush. I think there's some that care, and then, there's also, they have to deal with certain activists in Minneapolis, if they take a hard stance on crime. There's some that I think, are taking a serious approach to this, but there are many that outright just blame the police for everything. And I think pretty much just think that all criminals are innocent. And that attitude is just absolutely nuts. But anyway, so homicides doubled, the shootings are up, carjacking is way up. And I think a large part of the reason for that is because, the lack of police, first of all, but also the policy that police don't chase. And I understand that, sometimes there's a police chase, and bad things happen, in having a high-speed chase through an urban area, and that's tragic and that's awful. But, the consequence of not chasing is that all they have to do is run. All they have to do is put their foot on the pedal, and they're scot-free. So what do you think all these criminals are going to do? That's what they do. I saw a post on the 5th Precinct crime page I think it was last week, and it said, in pursuit of stolen vehicle, and then, the speed is now high chase, we're letting them go. I can't remember the term they use, but, they're not pursuing, no pursuit. And if you don't pursue, they're just going to run because they know they can get away. It's that simple. And then, the lawlessness gets completely out of control, the carjacking gets out of control, the auto theft gets out of control. But back to your question, no, it's policies like that. It's a lack of support for the police. When, and I believe in supporting the police when they behave appropriately, which is the vast majority of the time. I mean, obviously there are issues, disciplinary issues that need to be dealt with, but the fact of the matter is the police are acting appropriately the vast majority of the time. So it's the enforcement side, but as you were saying, it's a court problem too. I mean, we have these prosecutors that are almost on the side of the defense. They're not trying to prosecute these people and get them off the streets and keep the citizens of Minneapolis and my district safe. And then, you've got the prosecutors who aren't prosecuting hard enough, and the judges aren't sentencing hard enough. I mean, these people that push old ladies down or point guns at people and take their cars, they need to go to jail. And we need to get them off the streets and get them into whatever the programs that we have, in jails and these, juvenile homes. But we've got to get them off the street. We can't just keep dumping them on the street because then they'll just steal more cars. So it's a multifaceted problem. And then, of course, the cops, the police, if you were a cop and you knew that the prosecutor and the judge was just going to let the person that, you risked life and limb to tackle and arrest and bring in, why would you risk life and limb to bring those people in? So it's a very multifaceted problem.
And are you hearing the same thing from voters as you're talking to them, as you're working through your campaign? Are they saying the same, expressing the same issues that you have, or are they saying anything different?
Well, they're absolutely concerned about the crime, I mean, people don't like to raise children in places where there's endless carjackings and violent break-ins or break-ins and lots of crime. I mean, people are very concerned about it. It's a very large issue in the city. Some people obviously are more concerned than others. There is absolutely a contingent in the city that shares the viewpoint of, the people who are, letting these people go and not enforcing the law. But there's a lot of people in the district that, really want to see change, I believe. So, yeah, I'll give you a couple more stats here. I mean, this is a really alarming one. This is a Minnesota-wide one, but in 2019, I guess there were 467 recorded assaults on cops. In 2021, there were over 1,100. That's more than double. People are attacking police. Detected gunshots in Minneapolis, because we have the Shot Spotter, which is a great thing to have. That's up 230% since 2019. 2021 over 2019. And then the other thing is that of the shooting victims, 83% were black, and blacks only make up 19% of the population in Minnesota. So a very large, a very disproportionate percentage of the victims of violent crime, I'm going to use the shootings as a metric because I don't think we have quite as good a data on the lower stuff, but I'm guessing that it's similar, are minorities, and blacks especially. And I don't see how people can say that, that they believe Black Lives Matter if that's not a problem for them. If you can't really say Black Lives Matter if you only care about the black lives that are, that meet, that get in altercations with police that go sideways through fault of police or theirs or whatever, that get in altercations with police that end tragically. If those are the only ones you care about, you don't really care about all black lives because a much larger number of black lives are being murdered and shot and robbed and all these things on the streets of Minneapolis, and the people that say that they care about black lives, they just don't seem to care about that. And that's a real problem, and I don't understand it. I don't know if it's some form of ignorance or what, but that's what's going on in this city right now. Crime is disproportionately felt by the poor. I have some more sort of well-to-do, well, I don't know if I should say well-to-do, but reasonably well-to-do white progressive friends who live in, condos or apartments well off a ground floor, and a lot of them don't think there's a crime problem because they can afford to avoid it. But poor people and minorities can't. They live in it. And if we just let the crime go, they're the ones that are going to get hurt the most, and they are getting hurt the most. So this really is a racial justice issue that the left is completely ignoring, and it's awful.
And as you're talking about, those who are, disenfranchised economically, are we seeing other issues with the city with the crime rate, such as businesses leaving? Is there?
Yeah, so there's lots of that going on too. I'll talk about the restaurant apocalypse for a minute here. So Eat Street is actually right next to me and in my district. It's District 62. So according to, what is the Open Table? Open Table, diners are down 54% July 2022 over July 2019. That's down to less than half. The restaurants are getting absolutely decimated. People are afraid to go there because of the crime. I mean, a lot of their customers were people that drive in from the suburbs, because Minneapolis has still a very vibrant restaurant community. A lot of great restaurants. Black Forest Inn is right down the street from me. I remember when I used to street park, I used to, be kind of annoyed that they were taking up all the parking spots. But now there's lots of parking spots because the people from the suburbs aren't coming up to go to those restaurants in anywhere near the numbers that they used to be, because they know about the crime. I mean, there was a carjacking, there was a strong-arm carjacking, I think it was Sunday, just 2 blocks south of me. We're on Eat Street, on Nicollet and 27th. I mean, they're not coming up here if that's going on, right by the restaurants. So Pancha Villas, my former favorite Mexican restaurant that used to be near 26th and Nicollet, that's now gone. That's something else. A lot of them are struggling. There's restaurants in other parts that are closing down, more so than before. I mean, restaurants are always kind of a high turnover industry. But yeah, no, they're really suffering from the crime, and it's destroying them. I'm really concerned. The one I'm worried about next is Black Forest Inn. If I go in there, it really looks like it might not be long for this world. So if you like that place, definitely go there soon, because I don't know how much longer it's going to be around.
My favorite is Jasmine, which I know they shut down their main restaurant, and I think they have their deli open. But again, I'm just not seeing it reopen, and it scares me that Eat Street and some of those gems, are just going to disappear from Minneapolis. It's got one of the most diverse populations, but diverse group of restaurants, and we're just not seeing it come back from the pandemic, unfortunately.
I know there's a lot of very good, foods from different parts of the world there. I agree. So yeah, that is really absolutely decimating the restaurants. But yeah, as I said, that's what's going on with the crime issue. As a candidate, that's my #1 issue. My campaign slogan is "It's the crime, stupid."
I saw that. I love it.
They don't. A lot of them just don't want to talk about it. And my opponent, he advocated for the charter amendment to defund the police. And that, I think, is a large part of why the Minneapolis Police Department, I believe from what I hear, they're well under 600 officers. It's hard to get an accurate number, but if you talk to some people on the inside, they say, oh yeah, they're not even close. They're trying to hide the number. They're supposed to be at 800 something by the city charter, but they really need to be at 1,200.
And I think that's a minimum of 800. We're talking about, we're not even at the minimums for
it's like 8 something. It's like 830 or 845. But yeah, depending on the census results. But no, they need to have 1,200 cops. I mean, the U.S. Capitol, my understanding is that they have 2,400 just for the Capitol complex, not a city of 400,000 people. So yeah, no, we absolutely need way more cops. And to get that, and to get them to be effective, we need to back them every time that they are not misbehaving, which is the vast majority of the time. We're going to need to pour money into it. That's really what I think it's going to take for the city. It's going to be expensive. But Minneapolis, I believe, has quite a bit of money. They just don't spend it properly. And yeah, it's going to take those things, and then on the prosecuting and judging side, it's going to take a change there as well. That's the only thing that's going to turn this around. Those things have to happen. We need more cops. We need the cops to be supportive so that they aggressively, try to stop crime, to make it a safe city. And then we need those other two groups of people to prosecute and sentence the criminals so that, you know, people learn that, you know, this isn't a place where you can just get away with crime. Because right now, the criminals know. I mean, and from my experience, you know, with the break-ins, they just know they can get away with it. You know, the cops either aren't coming anytime soon, and if they do, they're probably not going to chase them too hard. And if they do happen to get arrested, they'll probably be back on the street soon. They might be bailed out by the Minnesota Freedom Fund. You know, so yeah, they almost commit crimes with impunity, and the, you know, less well-to-do citizens of Minneapolis are the ones that are suffering the most. Because like I said, poor people can't afford to escape crime like wealthier people can.
And how would you use your role as a Minnesota senator to really focus on the issue of Minneapolis and making it, I think, one of the most beautiful cities in Minnesota? It has so much to offer.
It still is in many ways, you know, one of the most beautiful cities in the state. You know, it's kind of the crown jewel in a way. There's a lot of beautiful things in Minneapolis and in the district. So the biggest thing I can do is rhetoric. And I think the rhetoric is really what is decimating the police, to be honest, more than anything. That's what's killing morale. That's what's killing down, you know, recruiting class sizes I've heard are much smaller. It's this rhetoric, and, you know, we need public officials to not bash the cops every opportunity they get, to not always assume the worst about them, to wait until the facts come out in a case before they call for heads to roll, and that sort of thing. You know, we need to be more sensible and less, you know, jerky and reactionary when these things happen. We need to stop lying about them. I mean, I hear people say, you know, my gosh, I heard a coworker the other day say, "Oh, Minneapolis cops are handcuffing people and executing them." Well, no, they're not doing that. That didn't. I asked him to, you know, say, "Well, give me an example," and he couldn't give me one. Whoa. But like, this is what's in people's heads. You know, this attitude needs to change. So the rhetoric is number one. And you know, we need to call out people who are bashing cops. But so the rhetoric is number one. But legislatively, I wouldn't vote for any local government aid for the city of Minneapolis until they, at the very least, meet their chartered requirement number of police, and maybe preferably some other metric that says you have to get crime down to a certain level before we're going to give you money, because we're not going to give you nice things if you just, you know, have a city like that where crime is rampant. You know, that doesn't make any sense. So that is one thing I would do. My legislative means are a bit limited. I actually think that, you know, I think legislators should have a say in who the judges are. I'd like to see a constitutional amendment to that effect, so that, you know, Governor Walz or whoever can't just unilaterally appoint whoever he wants as judges. You know, I think there should be some approval by at least the state Senate. And if, you know, we got that, then we could say, no, we're not going to let you appoint any judges that are just going to let all the criminals go. So yeah, and then, you know, fund training for police officers as well, so that we can try and get, you know, even though there's a lot of things working against us, so we can try and get as many new police officers through the pipeline, you know, to supply the cities, especially those in the metro, as possible. You know, that's what I would do. But I really think, as I said, that the biggest thing is the rhetoric. You know, we got to stop this.
What's going on. And Andrew, one thing, you are running as a Republican in probably one of the bluest districts, but you have a unique platform, I think unique to most Republican candidates. Do you want to talk about that?
Yes, absolutely. So I guess one thing that makes my platform unique, and I don't know if this has ever been done before, but I feel like I must almost be the most pro-law and order candidate that has ever existed, that also, or at least in this state, that also supports full marijuana decriminalization. I see this as a moral issue. I don't think it's right to lock people up or severely fine them or ruin their lives for smoking, possessing, and selling marijuana. I don't think that makes any sense. I think this has become, at this point, akin to alcohol prohibition in many ways. The prohibition is not working. And the solution to, you know, the problem of drug use, if we'll call it that, is much worse than a disease, and it is simply not working. It's not worth it, and it's not working, and it's not worth it. And so I think, you know, we need to not make the mistake that certain other states have made, and sort of half legalize, you know, and heavily regulated, and then you still have a black market, and then you still have these problems. You know, we just needed to end this attitude that we think that, you know, we're going to stop people from using it, because it's just absolutely absurd. I mean, it's everywhere. I've never used it in my life, and I can say that. You know, I support full decriminalization, but I have never partaken, and I think it's absolutely ridiculous that, you know, we, as I said, imprison and fine people for that. And it causes a lot of problems. You know, it ruins people's lives. And it's a waste of time. I believe it's a waste of time for law enforcement.
Exactly.
And I think, you know, the Minneapolis Police Department's policy, you know, recognizes that, because I believe that they have said that they are not going to pursue any low-level marijuana offenses in the city, because it's a pointless waste of time. They have real crimes with real victims that, you know, they are attempting to get to. And they have no time for, you know, writing up tickets for people smoking weed.
As we wrap up our show, how can our viewers or how can voters get a hold of you?
If they want to call me, I'll give out my phone number on here, 952-564-9089. Also, my Facebook page, just search Andrew Schmitz for Senate. Do we have a couple more minutes, or do we got to wrap up?
We have about a minute left, so anything you want to say,
yeah.
It's your minute.
Explore. I do want to say that I'm very much in favor of school choice as well. I'm in favor of doing what Arizona did with the Empowerment Scholarship Act, $7K for any private school tuition for any parent in the state. I think that's something that we should absolutely do. I think parents should not be financially coerced into sending their kids to public schools. I think they should have the choice.
Especially after seeing Minneapolis schools that are just failing. And
yeah, well, yes, but I think, you know, morally, you know, if parents don't like what's being taught in public school, they should be able to send their children to a school of their choice, including a religious school, regardless of what religion they are, Catholic, Protestant, Muslim, anything. I think that these funds should be available for them to send their kids to the schools of their choice. So yeah, so as I said, you know, I'm Andrew Schmitz. I'm running for state senate, and, you know, we need law and order in this state.
And it's the crime, stupid.
It is the crime.
All right, well, thank you for being on our show, and thank you for being on Republican Roundtable.
Thanks for having me.
Best of luck on your campaign.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on Republican Roundtable as we talk to Andrew Schmitz about Minnesota's 62 Senate District. Again, my name is Jennifer Zielinski, and you have a great day.